Hey everyone, the online campus team here. I'm Robert Murphy, this is Jordan Johnson, and we're going through the book of Matthew with our Matthew's book series. Now we're into Kingdom Advance here at the church. And as you know, many of you are probably in a field group and probably have one of these field guides. So what Jordan and I have been doing, if this is your first time watching, is we're answering a few of the questions from each of the different sessions. So today we're on session 5, and it's on page 80. And if you want to open up to that, or you can open up your Bible and to Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 through 26. And today we're going to be talking about anger. And sometimes this is a topic, I don't know about you, Jordan, I feel like can be misunderstood a little bit just because people think all anger is bad. And it's definitely something to be wary of, but something we're gonna discuss. So I'm going to read the verses real quick, and then we'll discuss it a little bit here. So here in Matthew chapter 5, starting with verse 21, it says, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder,' and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says, 'You fool,' will be liable to the hell of fire. So if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your guilt. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you will be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny." Now, that's kind of strong. But Jordan, I mean, just when you read that verse and that passage, what are some thoughts that come to your mind?
Well, I mean, I think as I was reading over this, it kind of just stands out. Like, it is kind of weird that God put so much emphasis on like what to do when you're angry and how to make it right, and like even puts himself second behind, you have to get right with this brother that you have an issue with before you can come and give your offering to me, before you can worship me. Yeah. And I think what it sort of in my mind was, later in Matthew when they asked Jesus what the greatest commandment of all is, he says, love God and also love your neighbor. Mm-hmm. So I think it kind of plays into that, and if you were to obviously going through Matthew a few times, you can kind of see where Jesus says the same thing over and over, really hammers things home. It's like, to love God properly, you have to love your neighbor properly. Yeah. And staying angry at your neighbor isn't going to allow you to do that. That's not how you're loving them properly, how you're serving them properly. So I think, to me, it just kind of, reading it the second time, the first time you read it kind of just seems like a don't get angry thing. Yeah. But really it's more about how to handle that anger, because I think anger is a natural emotion, and I mean, Jesus gets angry in the temple and flips over tables, and anger isn't bad in itself, right. But it's how you handle it, and you can't let it be a destructive thing.
No, that's really good. And I know for me, like a practical example is when I was a missionary a few years ago at the organization I was at, we'd have weekly worship services. And a guy I was actually friends with, we got into an argument right before the service, and I was really angry. I can't remember what it was. It was something menial. But I remember we were singing songs, and I was trying to focus. I remember God really bringing to mind this passage and saying, you need to get right with him. Here you are trying to, praise me, worship me, and you're upset and angry, and kind of to take it a little. I don't think I was disunified from, but I was kind of, in a sense, threatening that unity that we had. And, and just leading into kind of our questions, I think this is one reason why it's so, God's pretty poignant about it. It's not just like murdering someone. It's in your heart, if you have that, you're just the same as guilty of it because you're threatening unity. I think that's something that's really important to God. We see that in Jesus with the high priestly prayer, praying for the disciples to be one. And, when we see and experience church splits, I think a lot of times they can be solved, but we kind of let our anger get the better of us, and we don't follow the guidelines that like you said, like Jesus spells out here, so we can kind of properly, properly address that anger that we have. So just another thing, so you kind of alluded to it, we said anger is not necessarily a bad thing, but, it can be. How do you think it's right or beneficial?
Well, I think one thing that, as I thought about this question, the first thing I thought of was Mark when he preached on holy discontent. And the thing was, I can't I can't take any more of this. I had to make a difference. It's like what makes you angry and you want to solve. It's like if these things are piling up and causing anger in you, it's how do you take that anger and make it productive?
Yeah.
And how do you use that as your motivation to go out and do something? So if we've got plenty of people in the church, that are really active in Village One, I'm sure they were getting angry about how people there were treated or the opportunities that people in North Omaha had, and they finally had enough of that anger where they used it to go get involved there, or they used it to even move to a Village One lighthouse type, house and be in that place because that was there to use the word that Marcus used. I don't remember when he first introduced it, but I feel like he's used it several times. So just you're wholly discontent. What can't you stand? And I think a lot of that is you don't necessarily realize it the first time something like kind of gets under your skin, but the more frequently it happens and the more and more it builds, you realize, oh, there is an anger here, because usually it's like, that's unjust.
Yeah.
I know, I don't feel right about that. So, it builds up because that's just naturally what it does. And then you have to take that anger and say, okay, how can I, this is showing me that I have some, an area that I should get involved, or it's something I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
How can I use this anger as motivation to make a change?
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And you talk about that, I was reminded of Sky Jethani's message where he talked about Martin Luther King, and just, here's a man who is angry and upset at just the injustice that African Americans were experiencing in the South. But yet his response to when he was under threat of violence was to respond in a godly love. Like, he didn't deny the violence, he acknowledged it, but not to respond in violence. Like you said, respond with that holy discontent. And I think if you ever, I don't know if you've read it, but for those watching, if you ever had the chance to read letters from a Birmingham jail, like, just that's lays throughout it, like that understanding of, hey, we're not going to stand for this anymore. This is not right.
Yeah.
And I really think that's God. Like, he gets angry at injustice and those who commit sin against others. And I think that's our attitude. But like we spelled out, we got to be careful then how we respond, because often when we respond in anger, there's a danger of making matters worse.
Yeah.
So it's good to have anger. I think, like in Ephesians 4:26, I noted this. It said, "Be angry and do not sin." And it's just just that understanding of just that, like you said, it's a natural emotion, but we got to be careful what we do with it, or else we could make matters worse.
Right.
That's one thing. As I lost my page here, apologize for that. Just one other question. So, why do you think Jesus would highlight just things we say, like being careful of that? It's sometimes I remember people have jokes like, "Oh, you fool." But even like that, he's saying, hey, don't even say like those kind of jesting remarks if you mean it sarcastically or whatever.
Yeah.
What do you think Jesus means by that?
Well, I think that, and this might seem really simple, but it's like, we see physically what happens when you react out of anger physically. Like, you see the effects of that, whether it's throwing things, whatever it is. But then, that's destructive. Like, we see things being broken.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that is, like, if we're not releasing our anger physically, like, are we doing it verbally? And that's a lot harder to see.
Yeah.
And it when it's directed at you.
Yeah.
We've all experienced that. But I think God's saying is kind of just putting out there, like, hey, remember this. Like, remember that this is, like, I'm warning you against this because this is harder to see.
Yeah.
You don't see this happening. You don't experience it unless it's directed right at you.
Yeah.
So I just think that it's kind of just a reminder.
Yeah.
I feel like Jesus and all the people that have written about Jesus in the Bible, like all the different authors of books, like I think that they put in just simple reminders.
Yeah.
That there doesn't have to be a greater meaning, or a subtext to it of just like, hey, just remember that words hurt.
Yeah. And I think that's spot on, and that plays in the context of like, because that threatens relational unity and just affects the body, and it's dangerous when we oftentimes if we put someone down, it's usually to elevate ourselves above them, and so like you said, we got to be really careful. And I know there's times like we'll joke around, we'll tease each other, and do it with friends, but still just to be sensitive to the Holy Spirit about you just don't know sometimes what's going on underneath the surface, and like. Someone may maybe laugh it off or joke, haha, but, just to make sure with individuals you tease with, like, or joke with, like, hey, there could be an issue there,
Yeah.
and you don't know it. So just to be careful, I mean, be cognizant. I think more often than not, we're aware that what we say is hurting
Yeah.
someone. But also, if you're not sure, check with someone, even if you're joking with them, because there may be, you just don't know. And I think for a lot of us, we'd feel bad if we were joking with someone and then we found out later, like, that was really hurting them. And that affects relationship. So I think, like you said, it seems kind of silly, like, oh, I'm just calling them a fool. That different context in their time. But like you said, always be careful what we're saying to people. Well, hey, this is good stuff. Continue to read through the book of Matthew and, the Sermon on the Mount. Like a lot of the stuff, as we've talked about before, it can be challenging, but it's good. It not only brings life to us, but brings life to others. So, hey, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.